Your record came out like a year ago, and I do want to talk about it because last summer I should have talked about it, but we were doing blues trivia and we were doing different things. So you were talking about, what did you say? You wanted to be more complex with color and nuance when it came to songwriting. Mm-hmm. And I've always wondered with bands how you toe the line between complexity and simplicity when writing songs, and not wanting to go too far.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends on where you're at, not only as a writer, but also as a listener, you know. There are times where I've listened to, you know, classics, like Still Crazy After All These Years, and it's like, whoa, there's a lot of chords going on. I'm not in a place to really receive that information. And then at another time, it's like, man, there's just nothing better than how beautifully orchestrated this song is. So it just depends on like what you're looking to hear. Like when I was writing that album, there were a lot of it's like, oh, how do I, you know, come up with some sort of suspension and release in like in a new way, or bring in these non-chord tones or whatever. That just to play with songwriting in a way that I hadn't done on the first two records. But it's funny because even now, like when I look at the new songs that we have because we have a whole bunch of new songs for our fourth record that doesn't exist, we've pulled a good amount of that back. A lot of the chord stuff is a lot simpler. In some ways, the songs are more ambitious, but it's not in like a color way. It's not in like it's not in a chordal musical kind of way.
Yeah, sonically, what did I write? Hey Lover.
That one's
a different tune, right?
Yeah, well,
that's song.
Yeah, and that's our good buddy Blake Mills' song. He wrote that song. He put it on his first record, and he's one of the greatest musicians that we've ever met. But he doesn't tour that much, so a lot of people hadn't heard that song, and you know, we love him, we love that tune. We're like, it'd be fun to throw this one on there. So we did sort of, you know, in the spirit of when you see the old like Willie Nelson records covering his good buddies and stuff. We just thought it'd be fun to do that, and I do feel like it really, you know, it holds a cool place on the record because it's like, I don't know, maybe to a certain extent it's pretty clear that it's not.
They're all covering their ears. I have a feeling this is going to suck.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay. So you're saying?
Well, yeah, I just feel like it really added a different perspective to our record, just because it was clearly coming from a different place.
Yeah. Is it safe to say when we hear your voice, you're writing those lyrics, or are you writing for him?
No, he writes all the lyrics.
He writes everything for you. Yeah. Are you ever like, I'm not going to sing that, I don't like
no.
that?
No, I have implicit trust in everything that he writes.
Okay. What about with sounds Jakir was doing? Because I wrote down one of the snare sounds on. Sorry, I did this all on the plane this morning. Something in Common.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's such a weird snare sound, but it's so awesome at the same time.
Yeah, that's a little drum that I have that's just kind of like a toy that gets a strange sound.
Yeah, it was like a snare drum toy.
Like a kid's, like a little thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was actually something we had before we even went into the studio. Just like, we demoed that song with somebody else before. We worked with Jakir, and it was a similar thing. Yeah,
and it's cool because if you listen to that song, Griffen switches snares into like a proper snare once the band really kicks in. So it's cool to hear it go from the little dinky toy to the.
It probably isn't. But so what's the weirdest like instrument you guys screwed around with trying to get on the record?
I think we're like relatively tame when it comes to like getting experimental, just because I feel like for us, the kind of music we make is like. There is like a certain amount of like, tradition to it of like how to just play guitar better, how to play drums better. It's not let's pick up this weird like, you know, thing we don't look like bagpipes we don't know how to play and let's just put it on there. Like for us it's for, you know, like something like that, or like a, you know, saxophone mellotron sound is like, for us we're like, well, this is exciting, and you know, we continue to want to push that. We've been screwing around with different you know, synths and sounds and you know, baritone guitar and like stuff that we hope to like incorporate to a larger extent. But I guess at the end of the day, for a band like us, when we sound our best, it's really just when we're honest with the fact that we're four guys that play what we play. And when we're doing that, when I'm on guitar and he's just on drums and bass and keyboards, that's when it's Dawes. So we don't really wander into like too many different instruments.
What are things sounding like for these songs you're writing for the future? Can people hear them on the road this summer?
Yeah, we'll
cool.
probably play some tonight. We've been playing them quite a bit. We're gonna try to That's one thing we didn't really do with Stories Don't End. We didn't really play much of it out, whereas the first
Were they
two
not written
records-
before? Or are they?
They
you
were
just
written,
you chose not to.
we just
Yeah,
didn't
just
arrange them, and we
arranged.
just
Gotcha.
yeah. Whereas now we really with Nothing Is Wrong on our first record, North Hills obviously was our first record, and like any band we were touring, or not touring, but playing a lot of shows before we made it. But with both of our other records, we played so much of the material live, and we thought it'd be fun to do that again for this record, just to keep things shifting and changing.
How much of those first songs changed in arrangement since then? Just to keep them interesting for yourselves live.
You mean the
North Hill stuff, or even something off the other one.
I mean,
which
it's
is
considerably
not
changed.
coming to me right now.
By all of them, I think probably, but it's imperceptible when you're playing them every night. It like after being on the road for 6 months and playing one song every night, or close to every night. Only then can you go back and listen to the record version and be like, wow, like this is drastically different than how we recorded it. Or I wish we would have known then what we know now about this song and about this arrangement. So I think for us at least, it benefits us to have songs on the road before we go into the studio, or have them in the set list before we go to record them in the studio. The first single on this last record of ours
From Window
was
Seat?
it was one of two that was being played, and I think that's kind of evident, at least from my perspective. Going back and listening to it, that one seems like much more developed.
Interesting. What have you learned about yourself as a songwriter going back and like listening to the old songs?
I've learned that it's interesting. Like I think there's a big difference with how I sing, and maybe every songwriter or singer has this. I mean, it's the same thing of like when you hear a voicemail you left for someone and you're like, whoa, that's what I sound like.
Or I mean, like even like stories you were writing where maybe you didn't get it at the time, and now you're just like, oh, that's what I meant.
That happens
that
a little
happens,
bit.
right?
I mean, it definitely happens. I mean, I think my songwriting has been less of this sort of let it wash over me thing. It's been more of like, I want to write a song about this, and then I set out to do that, and then sometimes I something that isn't working for me at the time, I go back and like, oh, I really like that. I'm glad I stuck with that because I like that line, or something like that. But for the most part, it's sort of like a, with heroes like John Prine, it's a little more like clear, like, oh, this is what the song's about, rather than like, whoa, there's these images flying by, and like it's like, oh, I don't know what I was writing, I just wrote it, and then it presented itself later. There are those songs I feel like throughout our records, song like When You Call My Name or whatever it is, but there's less of that than maybe for other kind of writers, like, I don't know, someone like Conor Oberst or something, where it is a very visceral experience a lot of times, where he's even said, like, I don't know what they were about when I was writing them.
What have you learned about songwriting, I guess, for both of you from playing his stuff?
I mean,
Writing your musical parts, I mean.
yeah, I mean,
Playing your instruments.
I've always been, he's always been a hero in terms of a songwriter for me. So just to learn the inner workings of his material, and to see how he arranges stuff, see how he puts phrases together, and then to see how he takes those songs and puts them on stage. It's really taught me a lot. He's, like you don't notice, like, oh, he'll put the bridge after the first chorus. Like, not a lot of people are doing that, and he does it like kind of regularly. Or he'll do a certain kind of chord change that you hear throughout different songs that I never noticed before. It's like, oh, he's got his like signatures that I guess are always like clicking in people's heads, but they're not necessarily aware that that's what they're picking up on.
I did want to ask you just before we go about bookending the record with because no one knows how to say the word. Reprise, reprise.
Reprise, that's what I say.
You both say reprise.
Yeah.
Okay. But they're drastically different versions of it.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, it's funny because like I wrote it as you hear it on the first track, and I just felt like the song wasn't done. I felt like I wanted to like turn it around one more time, and so I wrote the last verse and last chorus, and I changed the words of the last chorus, and at that point it was like 7.5 minutes of like a lot of words. It was just so many lyrics, and as much as I love, Bob Dylan songs or Leonard Cohen songs or whoever it is that do that sometimes, I just felt like for that song it just wasn't feeling right for us to just plow through 7.5 minutes or whatever it was of just this one long Just Beneath the Surface. And then I started thinking, like, because that what you hear is track 12 was written considerably later, I thought, well, maybe there's something that could be cool about that, because I do feel like thematically there's a lot about what this song's getting after that you can find through the other songs. Maybe it would be cool to put it at the end and kind of come up with a different arrangement for it, and just kind of bring it back around. And I'm really happy the way that came out. We whenever we do like little acoustic performances or sometimes when we play it live, when we're working on versions of it live, we put them back together and do like this long version. But for the most part, it's we're really happy with the way it came out.
How do you know when a song ends? I mean, like when it's done. I mean, the record's called Stories Don't End, but songs need to, right?
Yeah.
Like they have to. Yeah, at some point you just need to be like, okay, it's good now.
Yeah, I don't know.
What was the hard? Maybe I'll phrase the question this way: what was the hardest one to be like? Okay, now I think it's done now.
Yeah, well, I guess that one, because I mean, there was a finished song, and then I still was like, I feel like I got to keep writing it. And then there's other songs where you just know that it's like short, and that's fine.
Like what was easiest?
Like we have like our song "If I Wanted Someone," it's like a verse, chorus, and then like half a verse, and then another chorus, and there's no other bridge, there's no third verse, and it's not, and that's very little for me normally. Normally there's no bridge or third verse or something, and I just, with that one I was like, I just feel like that's saying what it needs to say. Just repeat the chorus again, and I think it's done. And then other songs where, like a little bit of everything, I wrote the 3 little stories. Where there's a guy jumping off a bridge and an old man, and then people getting married, and I was like, I still don't think that it's done. I don't know if it's kind of ridiculous or not, but I want to like have one more chorus where I try to tie the whole thing back together, where it's not regarding one of the like little stories, and so I wrote that last chorus, and I didn't really know. I was like, is this overboard or what? But I'm glad we put it in there. But yeah, there's moments like that where it's like, I guess it could be done, but I guess there's just this sometimes, not always, but with that song or Just Beneath the Surface, where I feel like there's not a period on it yet. There's not an ending, and I like that satisfaction that comes from when you know a song is over. Like hearing Tom York say at the end of Kid A, "I'll see you in the next life." Like it's like that's conclusive. That feels like not only the end of a song, but the end of a record, or whatever it is.
That's a good way to end this. But we do something called 5 questions, 5 quick questions, 1-word answers. Road or studio?
Road.
Lennon or McCartney?
Lennon.
When you hear a song, what usually hits you first? Lyrics, melody, or rhythm?
Lyrics.
Rhythm.
If someone's never heard Dawes before, what song do they start with?
Someone Will.
Oh, cool.
Little acoustic one.
It's 2 words.
Yeah, that's all. Look good. You agree with them?
I don't know. Maybe something in common. I don't know.
Okay. In 1 word, Dawes.
Dawes.
Clever.
I don't know. Band.
Okay. Good work.
Yeah,
Is that the Empire State
I have to
Building?
think about that. No, it's just
Oh, I was gonna be like, that's very appropriate for where we are right now. Yeah.
I get that a lot.
We'll get that. Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Right
man.
on.
Appreciate it.